At a time when NATO says the security threat could be greater than ever, 10 countries led by Canada train together in Latvia.
We're ready and we're prepared to act in a defensive nature here, but that we're ready on a moment's notice should Russia, her allies, or any other adversaries threaten Latvia, threaten Europe.
These battle drills come as the alliance is about to officially welcome a new member. Finland's NATO bill is now ratified by Turkey's parliament. On the streets of Helsinki, public support is high, but some are still a little leery.
That's the only thing that could go bad about NATO is that then Finland would get involved in other people's business.
I think we are ready for it. I think it brings safety for us.
Turkey previously delayed Sweden's membership bid unless the country extradited what Turkey calls terrorists. NATO officials hope that bid will be ratified soon. Russia has said it's going to send tactical nuclear weapons to Belarus. The country's president said he's willing to take Russia's intercontinental missiles as well. I want to safeguard the state of Belarus, he said. During Alexander Lukashenko's speech, he called for an immediate ceasefire in Ukraine. Likely a non-starter for Ukraine, given that it wants to first see a withdrawal of Russian troops. As the war there grinds on, the battle group commander says that doesn't mean the risk elsewhere has subsided.
Russia's shown in the last year that they're very unpredictable at the tactical level. So while they may be very occupied in Ukraine, that doesn't decrease their ability to threaten or harm other nations really anywhere in the world at this point.
That's why the NATO alliance is growing, and why Canada and other nations have pledged to increase the number of troops stationed in Latvia and in other Baltic countries.
Well, I'm quite happy. I have to say that this is a day of joy for Finns. We have been working for this NATO membership now more than 10 months and first waited for Hungary to ratify our application, and now we got good news from Turkey last night. Foreign Minister Çavuşoğlu called me and was bringing this good news in the midnight.
And sir, you have to now, if I believe this is correct, you have to just file some final documents, but this is something you can do, your government. When are you expecting to do this, and when does Finland essentially become the new member? Is this a matter of days, weeks now?
Well, it's probably a matter of days. First, both Hungary and Turkey has to deposit their own ratification documents to Washington. I have been informed that Hungary will do it now, actually on Friday, Washington time, and then Turkey is planning to do it probably on Monday and so forth. Then comes the invitation to us, and we will deliver our written documents to Washington. So it's a question of days if everything goes smoothly. And of course, next week we have Tuesday, Wednesday, a NATO foreign ministers meeting in Brussels, and hopefully Mr. Stoltenberg is already digging the hole for a new flag hole in Brussels.
Okay, just a matter of days then. Sir, good morning. Thank you for joining us on this historic day for you and the nation of Finland. What does it mean materially on the ground in Finland in the months and years ahead, the membership of NATO? What does it mean in terms of defence spending and the additional military capacity of Finland?
Well, first of all, of course, we have so far been taking care of our own security. We have a big reserve. We have a conscription army in Finland. We have been investing to new fighters, for example, the F-35s and so forth. So I think our military is in a good shape. But of course, joining NATO means that we will be covered by the Article 5. So any difficulties which appears to us or any other NATO country, the whole NATO will defend that country. And in these days when we are witnessing a war in Europe, the Russian aggression against Ukraine, this is a very important step.
There was an aspiration, of course, that Finland and Sweden would join at the same time. We know that because largely of Turkey, Sweden will not be joining in the near future. Has there been any discussion, sir, about holding off on passing through those official documents from Finland until you get more clarity from Turkey on its stance vis-à-vis Sweden? How detrimental is it to NATO that you're not joining at the same time?
Well, of course, our biggest wish was that we could do this at the same time. We applied at the same time, and we were wishing to be members at the same time. Unfortunately, due to processes in Hungary and Turkey, there was a separation of Finland and Sweden. But this, of course, means that we continue our very, very close cooperation with Sweden. We hope that Sweden will be a member before the coming Vilnius summit of NATO in the coming July. And this is a period after the Turkish elections, this period when also Sweden will impose their new legislation on terrorism and so forth, which has been a question with the Turkey. So I think the elements are there, and I hope that we shouldn't need to wait Sweden for a long time.
And that's certainly what Sweden is hoping too. As you said, you wanted this to be a double bid. Obviously, now it has been split. But, sir, I do want to go back to Russia. We have seen Vladimir Putin say potentially station tactical nuclear weapons in Belarus. Yesterday, a reporter was detained. And we have seen just this general toughen-up line from Russia. Do you wonder or worry about potential retaliation? Remember, the Russians said they did not want NATO at their doorstep, and that's essentially what they get now.
Well, of course, first of all, our common border, we have 1,300 kilometers, 800 miles common border with Russia. This border has been maintaining peaceful. Actually, Russia has been withdrawing some of the military and some of the material to Ukraine and to the Ukrainian front. So we cannot see any direct threat from Russia. But of course, this whole war in Europe is concerning us because, as we always know, in war, new things can happen and surprises can happen. And of course, the news that the tactical nuclear weapons will be stored in Belarus is not good news for the region. And we have always also saying that issues like the explosion of the Nord Stream pipeline and so forth, it was very close to us. So the war had implications also to Nordic countries and the Baltic Sea region.
And your country, too, is very sympathetic to Ukraine. You really have said from day one, stand with Ukraine. Of course, now enter the Chinese government. They say they have potentially a proposal for peace. Do you wonder, sir, and this is a very delicate question, but I have to ask you, do you believe China is being honest here? Can they really broker an honest peace deal? Do you trust them?
First of all, we really have been giving, as Finland, almost 1 billion euros worth military help, direct military help to Ukraine to continue like that. Of course, we were very curious when China said that they will publish their peace plan for Ukraine. We haven't seen any real steps toward that issue. China has always been raising up the territorial integrity when it comes to their own region, and I think it would be very helpful if China underlines the same principle also vis-a-vis Ukraine. We haven't seen that yet.
And just, sir, before we let you go, one question on that land border, and you flagged this, that 1,300-kilometre land border that Finland shares, of course, with Russia. What does this mean for NATO? You're joining the alliance and the protection of that border and the integration of your military forces with other NATO members in terms of the capabilities of NATO. How does it change the calculus?
Well, of course, NATO has to now enhance the military planning to this region, and I have to say that we also need Sweden to the military planning, because when you look the security of Finland and the depth of the defense and so forth, it's very difficult to plan a defense in this region without Sweden. But definitely now we are having more exercises with NATO and NATO countries. Certainly in the military planning, NATO will take out the possible risks for Finland and so forth. But we also underline that we have a very strong military. We invest to our own military and military equipment. So NATO is, of course, additional security guarantee for us.